Adam was not like most 13-year-olds. While others might have spent their days engrossed in video games or hanging out with friends, Adam had a passion that set him apart: recording the sounds of nature. For as long as he could remember, he had been fascinated by the subtle, intricate melodies of the natural world. The rustle of leaves in the wind, the gentle chirping of crickets, or the distant calls of birds at dawn. For Adam, these sounds were more than just noises. They were stories, glimpses into a world that existed beyond his physical limitations. Adam's connection to nature had grown even deeper after he began using a wheelchair due to a condition that affected his legs. Despite his physical challenges, he never let his condition define his spirit. Where others saw limitations, Adam saw possibilities. The wheelchair was merely a tool, a way for him to explore, listen, and connect with the world around him. And while his legs couldn't take him far, his recordings allowed him to travel in ways most people never could, immersing himself in the untouched wilds of Earth. Adam's parents, Karen and Michael, were his strongest supporters. They understood that Adam's love for nature and sound wasn't just a hobby. It was his way of expressing himself, a way to embrace life with boundless curiosity. Every year, they planned a special trip to the Serengeti Nature Reserve in Africa, a place where the richness of life was unparalleled. These trips were the highlight of Adam's year, a chance for him to fully engage with the natural world and expand his growing collection of wildlife sounds. The Serengeti held a special place in Adam's heart. Its vast plains stretched endlessly under an open sky, teeming with life in all its forms. The rhythm of the ecosystem, the interplay of animals, wind, and even the distant roll of thunder was something that Adam found profoundly moving. The family would travel across the rugged landscapes in a specially outfitted safari vehicle, with Adam's recording equipment always within reach. For hours, Adam would sit silently, letting the sounds around him fill the air and his recorder. His parents often marveled at his patience, knowing how deeply he cared about every detail. Recording the sounds of nature was no simple task, especially for a boy with limited mobility. It required focus, resilience, and a sharp ear for detail, all qualities Adam had in abundance. He would sit for hours, completely absorbed in his surroundings, with his parents close by, offering both practical support and encouragement. They had grown accustomed to Adam's unyielding determination, often stepping back to let him take the lead. His focus, combined with his parents' unwavering belief in him, made their trips to the Serengeti both deeply fulfilling and uniquely adventurous. Each year, the family's trips became an opportunity to bond, to disconnect from the fast pace of modern life, and immerse themselves in the raw beauty of the wild. Michael often joked that Adam was the true leader of their expeditions, dictating where they should stop or when they should remain silent to avoid disturbing the sounds he was trying to record. Karen, on the other hand, was the family's quiet rock, always making sure Adam had what he needed while ensuring they didn't miss the best moments in the reserve. The Serengeti was more than a destination for Adam. It was an inspiration. The sights, the smells, and above all, the sounds of the wilderness offered him a sense of freedom that no wheelchair could ever confine. It was in these moments, surrounded by the untamed beauty of Africa, that Adam felt most alive. For him, recording the sounds of the Serengeti wasn't just about collecting data. It was about preserving memories, capturing the essence of a place that had become a second home. Back at their lodging each evening, Adam would carefully review his recordings, listening for subtle nuances that might otherwise go unnoticed. His parents would sit with him, sharing in his excitement as he cataloged his findings. Their conversations often drifted to dreams of the future, with Adam sharing ideas of how his recordings could be used to educate others about the importance of conservation. It was during these quiet evenings that the family grew closer, united by a shared purpose and a profound love for the natural world. Adam's fascination with sound had also led him to become something of a mini expert on audio equipment. He knew exactly which microphones to use for different environments and how to filter out unwanted noise. His parents, though not as knowledgeable, had learned to trust his instincts. Over the years, They had invested in high-quality recording gear to support his passion, and it had become something of a family ritual to prepare and pack the equipment together before each trip. These annual journeys to the Serengeti were not without their challenges. The reserve's rugged terrain wasn't always accessible, and Adam's wheelchair required careful navigation. But the family never saw these obstacles as insurmountable. For Adam, the effort it took to be there only deepened his appreciation for the experience. His parents often remarked on his resilience, noting how he never complained, even when the heat or dust made things uncomfortable. For Adam, every trip to the Serengeti was a reminder of the beauty and complexity of life. The reserve had become a place of both discovery and reflection, a space where he could push past his physical limitations and connect with something larger than himself. The recordings he brought home each year weren't just sounds. They were pieces of a world that he loved deeply and wanted to share with others. These trips also served as a testament to the bond Adam shared with his parents. They weren't just accompanying him on his adventures. They were his partners, his cheerleaders, and his unwavering support system. Together, they had created a tradition that celebrated Adam's passion and their love for one another, a tradition that had become a cornerstone of their family life. As they returned home at the end of each trip, Adam would immediately begin organizing his new recordings, eager to share them with friends and family. His room, filled with shelves of meticulously labeled audio files, was a testament to his dedication. To Adam, these sounds were more than just recordings. They were a way of holding onto the magic of the Serengeti, a place that had given him so much. Adam's story was one of resilience, passion, and the unbreakable bond of family. Through his love of sound and his journeys to the Serengeti, he had found a way to transcend the limitations of his condition and embrace the boundless beauty of the natural world. For him, life wasn't about what he couldn't do. It was about what he could achieve, and with each trip to the Serengeti, he proved that the possibilities were endless. For Adam, the annual trip to the Serengeti had become more than a tradition. It was a part of who he was. Every year, his parents, Karen and Michael, would carefully plan the journey, ensuring that every detail was in place to make the trip both accessible and meaningful for their son. It was their way of nurturing his love for the natural world, a passion that had grown stronger with each visit. Despite the challenges posed by his leg condition and reliance on a wheelchair, Adam approached these trips with unwavering excitement and anticipation. The Serengeti was his sanctuary, a place where he felt truly alive. This year was no exception. As the time to leave drew closer, the familiar buzz of preparation filled their home. Michael inspected their equipment, making sure the specially adapted safari vehicle was ready for the rugged terrain of the reserve. Karen meticulously packed their bags, double-checking every item to ensure Adam would have everything he needed. And Adam himself was more focused than ever, spending hours poring over maps of the Serengeti, reading articles, and watching documentaries. However, this year was different, not because of their destination, but because of Adam's secret goal. In the weeks leading up to the trip, Adam had decided that this year he would attempt something extraordinary. He wanted to record the roar of a tiger. For most, the idea might seem absurd. Tigers are not native to Africa and are extremely rare in the Serengeti, but Adam's research had revealed a possibility. A few tigers had been introduced to certain areas of the reserve as part of conservation efforts. While their presence was scarce, it wasn't impossible. For Adam, the challenge only added to the allure. Recording the roar of a tiger in the Serengeti would be his greatest achievement yet, a sound that could symbolize the untamed beauty and power of the wild. He kept his goal a secret at first, unsure of how his parents might react. They were always supportive, but Adam worried they might think his ambition was unrealistic. Still, the thought of hearing and capturing the deep, primal sound of a tiger was enough to fill him with determination. It wasn't just about adding to his collection. It was about proving to himself that he could achieve something extraordinary, even in the face of overwhelming odds. When the day finally arrived, the family set off with their usual mix of excitement and nervous energy. The long journey to the Serengeti felt like the beginning of a grand adventure, though Adam's mind was firmly fixed on his goal. As the golden plains of the reserve came into view, a familiar sense of wonder washed over him. The Serengeti was as breathtaking as ever, its vast landscape stretching endlessly under the open sky. Herds of wildebeests moved in unison, giraffes grazed gracefully in the distance, and the occasional roar of a lion echoed across the savanna. Yet, despite the abundance of wildlife, Adam couldn't help but feel a pang of doubt. Could a tiger really be here, in this land where lions reign supreme? As they settled into their lodge and began unpacking, Adam decided it was time to share his goal. During dinner that evening, he hesitated for a moment before blurting it out. "I want to record a tiger's roar this year," he announced, his voice steady but filled with anticipation. Karen and Michael exchanged a quick glance, their surprise evident. Karen spoke first, her tone gentle but cautious. "Adam, tigers aren't native to the Serengeti. They're not like the lions we see here every year." "I know," Adam replied quickly, "but there have been sightings. I've done my research. There are a few tigers in certain parts of the reserve. It's rare, but it's possible." Michael leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "Even if that's true, finding a tiger would be incredibly difficult. It's not something we can just plan for." "I don't care how hard it is," Adam said, his determination unwavering. "This is what I want to do. I need to try." His parents looked at each other again, silently communicating in the way only parents can. They knew how much these trips meant to Adam and how deeply he cared about his recordings. Finally, Karen nodded. "All right," she said softly. "If this is your goal, we'll do our best to help you." Over the next few days, Adam's mission became the central focus of their trip. He spent every waking moment thinking about how to increase his chances of success. He meticulously planned their routes, marked potential hotspots on the map, and adjusted his equipment to ensure it was ready for any opportunity. His parents, as always, were by his side, helping him navigate the challenges of the reserve. The search for a tiger, however, was far from easy. The Serengeti's vastness, combined with the rarity of tigers, made the task daunting. Adam was no stranger to patience. His love for recording had taught him the value of waiting for the perfect moment. But this was unlike anything he had attempted before. The knowledge that they might never encounter a tiger weighed heavily on him, but he refused to give up. As the days passed, the family encountered the Serengeti's usual wonders. Lions lounged under the shade of acacia trees, elephants moved majestically across the plains, and zebras grazed in large herds. Yet for Adam, these familiar sights and sounds were overshadowed by his singular focus. Each evening, as they returned to their lodge, he would review the day's recordings, searching for any hint of the sound he sought. Despite the challenges, Adam's determination inspired his parents. They admired his resilience, even as the search tested their own patience. The Serengeti, with its harsh heat and unpredictable terrain, was never an easy place to navigate, but Adam's unwavering drive kept them going. Karen and Michael often found themselves marveling at their son's passion, even as they worried about the emotional toll the search might take on him. Through it all, Adam held on to his dream. For him, the roar of a tiger wasn't just a sound. It was a symbol of everything he loved about the natural world, its power, its mystery, and its ability to surprise. Whether or not he succeeded, the journey itself was a testament to his belief in the beauty of the wild. As the trip continued, the family pressed on, their hopes rising and falling with each passing day. The Serengeti, as always, held its secrets close, but Adam remained steadfast. For him, the possibility of hearing a tiger's roar, even in the remotest corner of the reserve, was worth every moment of effort. The Serengeti stretched endlessly under the morning sun, its golden hues shimmering in the heat. Adam sat quietly in the back of the specially outfitted safari vehicle, his recorder resting on his lap, ready for use. The previous days had been exhausting, filled with long drives, false leads, and the growing weight of doubt. His parents, Karen and Michael, had done everything to keep his spirits up, but even their encouragement couldn't completely quell Adam's frustration. The roar of a tiger still seemed like an impossible dream, a goal slipping further from his grasp with every passing day. The family had decided to stop near a watering hole, a quiet place surrounded by low shrubs and tall grass. They parked the vehicle under the shade of a cluster of acacia trees, hoping to find some respite from the relentless heat. Karen unpacked a small picnic. Michael checked the map for their next destination, and Adam sat motionless, staring out at the landscape. His hands gripped the edges of his wheelchair tightly, his mind a storm of emotions. For days, he had imagined this moment, the encounter he had worked so hard for. But now, doubt gnawed at him. What if it never happened? What if he had come all this way, poured all his hope into this trip, only to return home empty-handed? The thought stung, and for the first time, Adam felt the humiliation of failure creep into his chest. He had convinced himself, his parents, and even the lodge staff that this was possible. Was it all just foolish ambition? As these thoughts swirled in his mind, a soft rustling sound broke the silence. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible, but Adam's ears, trained by years of recording, immediately caught it. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. The rustling grew louder, coming from the bushes to their left. "Do you hear that?" Adam whispered urgently, his voice barely audible. Karen and Michael stopped what they were doing and turned their attention to the bushes. Michael instinctively moved closer to Adam, placing a protective hand on his shoulder, while Karen reached for the binoculars. The rustling continued, slow and deliberate, as if whatever was moving was carefully studying its surroundings. The next few seconds felt like an eternity. Then, without warning, a tiger emerged from the thick foliage. It was unlike anything Adam had ever seen. The tiger's coat, a vibrant mix of orange and black stripes, seemed to glow in the sunlight. Its powerful muscles rippled beneath its fur with every step, and its eyes, piercing and golden, locked directly onto Adam's. Time seemed to stand still. Karen gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, while Michael instinctively reached for the vehicle's controls, ready to start the engine if needed. But Adam didn't move. He didn't feel fear, as one might expect in such a situation. Instead, an extraordinary sense of calm washed over him, as if he and the tiger were the only two beings in the world. "Adam, stay still," Michael said quietly, his voice trembling. "I'm fine," Adam replied, his voice steady. Slowly, deliberately, Adam reached for his recorder. His hands were shaking, but his determination overpowered his nerves. He pressed the record button, the device emitting a soft click that seemed deafening in the tense silence. The tiger continued to stare at Adam, its expression unreadable. Its ears twitched slightly, picking up the faint sounds of the surrounding savanna. Then it took a step forward, its massive paw landing silently on the dusty ground. Adam's recorder picked up the faint crunch of dry grass under the tiger's weight, as well as the deep, rhythmic sound of its breathing. Karen and Michael were frozen, torn between their instinct to protect their son and the sheer awe of the moment unfolding before them. Karen's eyes darted between Adam and the tiger, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure the tiger could hear it. "Adam, don't make any sudden movements," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I won't," Adam replied, his focus unshakable. The tiger stopped a few feet away from the vehicle, its gaze still fixed on Adam. The boy felt as though the animal was looking directly into his soul, studying him with an intensity that was both humbling and exhilarating. Adam's grip on the recorder tightened as he adjusted the settings, ensuring that every sound, the tiger's movements, its breathing, even the faint rustle of its fur in the wind, was captured with perfect clarity. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The tiger blinked slowly, its tail flicking once, before it turned its head slightly to scan the surroundings. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the tiger took a step back, its body tense as if preparing to retreat. "Wait," Adam murmured, his voice filled with a mix of desperation and awe. But the tiger didn't wait. With a graceful leap, it disappeared back into the bushes, its striped form vanishing as quickly as it had come. The rustling of the foliage grew faint and then ceased entirely, leaving behind only the sounds of the wind and distant birdsong. Adam sat motionless, his recorder still running. His heart was pounding now, the adrenaline catching up to him. He glanced at his parents, who were staring at him with a mix of relief and astonishment. Karen was the first to break the silence. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. Adam nodded slowly, his eyes still fixed on the spot where the tiger had vanished. "I'm fine," he said, though his voice wavered slightly. Michael let out a long breath, his shoulders relaxing. "That was incredible," he said, his voice filled with both awe and disbelief. Karen knelt beside Adam, placing a hand on his arm. "You were so brave," she said softly. "I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life." Adam finally looked away from the bushes and met his mother's gaze. "I wasn't scared," he admitted. "I don't know why, but I just wasn't." The family sat in silence for a few moments, processing what had just happened. For Adam, the encounter felt surreal, as if it had been a dream. But the warmth of the recorder in his hands reminded him that it had been real. He had been face to face with one of nature's most majestic creatures, and he had captured a piece of its essence in sound. As they packed up and prepared to leave the watering hole, Adam couldn't help but feel a newfound sense of purpose. The tiger's gaze lingered in his mind, a reminder of the connection he had felt in that fleeting moment. For all the frustration, doubt, and challenges of the past days, this encounter reaffirmed his belief in the beauty and power of the natural world. The Serengeti nights were both enchanting and unnerving, a mix of tranquility and the looming presence of wildness. The campsite was tucked away in a grove of tall acacia trees, offering a sense of shelter from the vast expanse of the savanna. Adam sat near the window of their safari vehicle, which doubled as a sleeping space, staring out at the dark landscape. The stars above were impossibly bright, scattered across the sky like shards of crystal. The distant calls of hyenas echoed through the night, mingling with the occasional low rumble of lions. For most, this was the soundscape of dreams or nightmares. But for Adam, it was perfection. His recorder sat in his lap, ready as always. Even after the thrilling encounter with the tiger earlier that day, his mind was still racing. He replayed every detail in his head, the way the tiger moved, the sound of its breathing, and most of all, the way it had looked at him. That calm, almost knowing gaze had left an impression on Adam that he couldn't shake. There had been no aggression, no fear, just a connection, as though the tiger had seen something in him that no one else could. Karen and Michael, meanwhile, were on edge. The encounter had shaken them, and although they were glad nothing had gone wrong, the thought of a tiger being so close to their son made them uneasy. Michael had taken extra precautions, checking the campsite for vulnerabilities and making sure all the windows and doors of the vehicle were secure. Karen kept glancing at Adam, her maternal instincts battling with her admiration for his composure. "You should get some rest," Karen said softly, breaking the silence. "It's been a long day." "I will," Adam replied, though he didn't move. His eyes remained fixed on the darkness outside, scanning the horizon for movement. "Adam," Michael said from the front seat, "I know you're still thinking about the tiger. But don't forget, this is the Serengeti. There are plenty of other animals out there. You got to be careful." "I know," Adam said, his voice calm. I feel like it's not over. Like there's more to come." His parents exchanged a glance, their worry deepening. But they knew better than to argue with Adam when he was this determined. Karen sighed and leaned back, closing her eyes in an attempt to rest. Michael stayed awake, occasionally shining a flashlight out into the dark, as though searching for any sign of danger. The hours passed, and the camp grew quiet. Even the hyenas' calls began to fade, leaving behind a heavy, almost oppressive silence. Adam had dozed off near the window, his recorder still in his lap. The vehicle's interior was dimly lit by a small camping lamp, casting soft shadows on the walls. Then it happened. A faint sound, so subtle it could have been imagined, reached Adam's ears. His eyes snapped open, his senses immediately on high alert. He listened intently, holding his breath. There it was again, a soft rustling, the unmistakable sound of something moving through the grass. "Mom! Dad!" Adam whispered urgently, nudging Karen's arm. She stirred awake, her face instantly tense. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I hear something," Adam said, pointing toward the window. Michael sat up, his hand instinctively reaching for the flashlight. "Stay quiet," he said firmly, his voice low but commanding. The rustling grew louder, closer. Adam's heart pounded, but it wasn't fear that gripped him. It was the same strange calm he had felt during the first encounter. He reached for his recorder, his hand steady despite the tension in the air. Suddenly, a shape emerged from the darkness, moving with the fluid grace of a shadow. Karen gasped, and Michael froze, the flashlight trembling in his hand. It was the tiger. The animal stopped just a few feet from the vehicle, its massive form illuminated by the dim light spilling from the window. Its eyes glinted like molten gold, scanning the campsite with the same calm intensity Adam had seen earlier. It wasn't prowling or stalking. It was simply there, as though it had chosen to visit them. Karen's breathing quickened, her hand gripping Adam's arm. "Michael," she hissed, "do something." "Stay calm," Michael replied, though his voice wavered. He fumbled with the flashlight, unsure whether to turn it on and risk startling the tiger. Adam, however, didn't share their panic. Slowly, he reached for the latch on the window and eased it open just enough to slide his recorder through. The tiger's ears twitched at the sound, but it didn't move. Instead, it turned its gaze directly to Adam, locking eyes with him once more. "Adam, no," Karen whispered urgently, pulling at his arm. "It's okay," Adam said softly, his voice steady. "It's not going to hurt us." Michael clenched his jaw, his hand hovering over the flashlight switch. "Adam, this isn't a game. Close the window." But Adam ignored him. He pressed the record button, and the device began capturing every sound. The faint rustle of the tiger's fur in the wind, the soft crunch of its paws on the dry grass, and the deep, steady rhythm of its breathing. The tiger tilted its head slightly, as if curious about the boy. It took a single step closer, its massive frame now mere feet from the vehicle. Karen's grip on Adam tightened, her eyes wide with fear. "Please, Adam," she whispered. "Close the window." "Trust me," Adam replied, his eyes never leaving the tiger's. The moment stretched on, heavy with tension. The tiger's presence was both terrifying and mesmerizing, a reminder of the Serengeti's raw, untamed power. Yet, as Adam watched it, he felt none of the fear that consumed his parents. Instead, he felt a deep, unexplainable connection, as though the tiger understood him in a way no one else ever could. For what felt like an eternity, the tiger stood there, its gaze unwavering. Then, without a sound, it turned and began to walk away, its movements slow and deliberate. Adam's recorder captured the fading sound of its footsteps until they disappeared into the night. The campsite fell silent once more, the air heavy with the aftermath of the encounter. Karen slumped back in her seat, tears streaming down her face. "I thought," she began, her voice breaking. "I thought it was going to attack." Michael exhaled shakily, his hands still gripping the flashlight. "That was too close," he muttered. "Way too close." Adam, however, was calm. He turned off his recorder and placed it on his lap, his face thoughtful. "It wasn't going to hurt us," he said quietly. "It just wanted to see us." Karen turned to him, her expression a mix of relief and frustration. "Adam, you can't take risks like that," she said, her voice trembling. "We could have been killed." "I wasn't scared," Adam replied simply. "I don't know why, but I wasn't." Michael shook his head, still processing what had happened. "You've got guts, kid," he said finally. "But you scared the hell out of us." The family sat in silence for a long time, the weight of the encounter hanging over them. For Karen and Michael, it was a moment of sheer terror. But for Adam, it was something else entirely. A moment of understanding, a fleeting connection with one of nature's most majestic creatures. The next morning, the air in the campsite was thick with a tense quietness. Karen and Michael still seemed shaken after the tiger's appearance the night before, their movements slower, their glances more deliberate. Meanwhile, Adam was calm, almost reflective, as he reviewed the sounds he had captured on his recorder. He replayed the faint rustling of the tiger's steps and the deep, rhythmic breath it had exhaled. Each sound brought back the memory of its piercing gaze, a connection he couldn't quite explain but felt deeply within. The family sat together for breakfast, their conversation subdued. Karen kept looking at Adam as though she wanted to say something, but held back. Michael, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly, seemed lost in thought. Finally, Adam broke the silence. "Mom, Dad," he began, setting down his recorder. "I need to ask you something." Karen and Michael both turned to him, their expressions wary. "What is it, sweetheart?" Karen asked softly. "The tiger," Adam said, his voice steady. "Do you think it recognizes me? I know that sounds crazy, but the way it looked at me, it didn't feel like just an animal. It felt like it knew me." Karen froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. Michael's grip on his coffee tightened slightly, his knuckles turning white. They exchanged a glance, something unspoken passing between them. "What?" Adam pressed, noticing their sudden discomfort. "Why are you looking at each other like that?" Karen set down her fork and reached for Michael's hand, her face pale. "Adam," she began cautiously, "there's something we need to tell you." Michael exhaled deeply, leaning back in his chair as though bracing himself. "It's something we should have told you a long time ago," he added. We weren't sure how to explain it. And honestly, we thought it was just one of those strange, unexplainable moments." Adam straightened in his chair, his curiosity piqued. "What are you talking about?" Karen looked at her son, her eyes soft but serious. "This isn't the first time a tiger has approached you, Adam," she said quietly. Adam blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Michael took over, his voice steady but laced with tension. "It happened during our first trip to the Serengeti. You were just a baby, maybe 6 months old. We'd taken a break from driving and stopped near a clearing. We were sitting outside the vehicle with you in your stroller. It was peaceful, just like last night, really quiet. Then, out of nowhere, a tiger appeared." Karen shivered at the memory. It was the most surreal thing. It just walked out of the bushes not far from where we were sitting. Your dad and I froze. We didn't know what to do. You were so small, and we couldn't grab you without drawing attention to ourselves. Michael nodded. "We thought for sure it was going to attack. But it didn't. It just stood there, looking at you. Not at us. Just you." Adam's heart raced as he listened. "What did it do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Karen smiled faintly, though her expression was still clouded with unease. "It didn't do anything. It just stared at you, like it was studying you. You were completely calm, not a single cry or movement. After a few moments, it turned and walked away, just as quietly as it had appeared." Michael leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. "It was the strangest thing, Adam. We didn't talk about it much after that because it felt too unbelievable. But we never forgot it. The way it looked at you like it saw something in you, something we couldn't understand." Adam sat back, stunned. The revelation felt like a missing piece sliding into place, a connection to the inexplicable calm he had felt during both encounters with the tiger. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" he asked, his tone edged with frustration. Karen looked pained. "We didn't want to scare you. You were a baby then, and as you grew up, we didn't see any reason to bring it up. We thought it was just a strange coincidence. Until now." "Until now?" Adam repeated, his voice rising slightly. "You mean after last night?" Michael nodded. "Yes. When the tiger showed up last night and acted the way it did, it was too similar to ignore. The way it looked at you, Karen and I both recognized it immediately." Adam's mind raced as he tried to process their words. The tiger had approached him twice in his life, both times in ways that defied logic or expectation. What was it about him that seemed to draw the animal's attention? And why had it behaved so calmly, almost deliberately, as though it wasn't just an animal, but something more? "Do you think it's the same tiger?" Adam asked hesitantly, voicing the thought that had been swirling in his mind. Karen and Michael exchanged another glance. "We don't know," Karen admitted. "It's possible, but it's also possible that it's just something about you, something the tiger senses." Adam frowned. "What do you mean? Like what?" Karen shook her head, her expression helpless. "I don't know, sweetheart. I really don't. But there's something about the way you've always connected with nature. The way you listen, the way you understand it. Maybe the tiger senses that." Michael sighed, rubbing his temples. Or maybe it's just one of those things we'll never be able to explain. Either way, it's clear that there's something unique about you, Adam. Something that draws it to you. Adam looked down at his recorder, his thoughts swirling. He had always felt a deep connection to nature, but he had never considered that it might go beyond his own understanding. The idea that the tiger, this majestic, powerful creature, might somehow recognize or sense something in him was both thrilling and humbling. The silence stretched on as the family sat together, each lost in their own thoughts. For Karen and Michael, the memory of that first encounter had always been a mix of wonder and fear, a moment they had tucked away in the corners of their minds. But now, faced with the tiger's return, they couldn't ignore the possibility that it meant something more. For Adam, the revelation only deepened his resolve. Whatever this connection was, he knew he had to honor it. The Serengeti had always been a place of discovery for him, a sanctuary where he could connect with the wild. But now, it felt like something more, a place where he was part of a larger story, one that he was only beginning to understand. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting golden light over the campsite, Adam turned to his parents, his eyes shining with determination. "I don't know what this means," he said quietly, "but I'm going to find out." Karen reached over and took his hand, her grip firm but gentle. "Whatever it is, Adam," she said softly, "we're with you." Michael nodded, his voice steady. Every step of the way, the family sat together, united by the mystery that had brought them to this moment, their bond stronger than ever. Returning home from the Serengeti was always bittersweet for Adam. On one hand, he loved revisiting the comforts of home, his quiet room filled with his neatly organized sound recordings and equipment. But on the other, leaving behind the vast, untamed wilderness always left him with a sense of longing. This time, however, the feeling was different. The encounters with the tiger, the stories his parents had shared, and the recordings he had captured had left an indelible mark on him. He couldn't shake the feeling that this trip had been more significant than any before. Karen and Michael noticed the change in their son. Adam, who was always thoughtful and introspective, seemed more determined than ever. As soon as they arrived home, he wasted no time unpacking his recording equipment and meticulously cataloging the sounds he had captured. Every rustle of grass, every chirp of a bird, and every distant roar of a lion was carefully preserved. But when it came to the recordings of the tiger, Adam hesitated. These sounds felt different, almost sacred. They weren't just recordings. They were part of a story he felt compelled to share. For days, Adam worked tirelessly in his room, piecing together his recordings to create something more meaningful than a simple collection of sounds. He decided to produce a sound album, weaving his encounters into a narrative. Each track would tell a part of the story, not just through the sounds, but also through his voice as he recounted the moments that had left him awestruck. The first track was a soft introduction, the Serengeti waking up at dawn, the calls of birds blending with the gentle rustling of leaves in the wind. Adam's voice, calm yet filled with emotion, described the vastness of the savanna and the sense of connection he felt to its wild inhabitants. As the album progressed, the recordings grew more intense, capturing the heartbeat of the Serengeti, the powerful roars of lions, the thunder of wildebeest migrations, and finally, the tiger. Adam spent hours fine-tuning the tiger's recordings. He included the sounds of its breathing, the faint crunch of its paws on the dry grass, and the rustling of the bushes as it moved. Over this, he layered his narration, describing the encounters in vivid detail. The first time it emerged from the bushes and locked eyes with him, and the second time it appeared at their campsite, its gaze calm and unyielding. His voice carried the weight of the experiences, capturing not only the awe he had felt but also the strange, unexplainable connection. When the album was finished, Adam called it the Serengeti's voice. It wasn't just a collection of wildlife sounds. It was a journey, an invitation for listeners to step into the world he had experienced so deeply. Karen and Michael were the first to listen, sitting together in the living room as Adam played the album from start to finish. By the end, Karen had tears in her eyes, and Michael was visibly moved. "This is incredible, Adam," Karen said, her voice thick with emotion. You've captured something so real. It's like being there all over again. Michael nodded. It's more than just sounds, Adam. It's a story, a powerful one. People need to hear this. Encouraged by their reaction, Adam decided to share the album online. He uploaded it to a platform that specialized in nature recordings, adding a description about his experiences in the Serengeti and his encounters with the tiger. At first, the response was modest. Fellow nature enthusiasts commented on the clarity of the sounds and the emotion in his storytelling. But within days, the album began to gain traction. Word spread quickly, and soon, Adam's inbox was flooded with messages from listeners around the world. Among the messages was one that stood out. It came from a prominent conservation organization dedicated to protecting endangered wildlife. The organization's director, a woman named Dr. Evelyn Hart, had listened to Adam's album and was deeply impressed. She invited Adam to present his recordings at their upcoming conference, where conservationists, researchers, and wildlife enthusiasts from around the world would gather. When Adam read the email aloud to his parents, Karen clasped her hands together, her face lighting up with pride. "Adam, this is amazing," she exclaimed. "You've been given a chance to share your story with people who can make a real difference." Michael smiled and placed a hand on Adam's shoulder. "You've worked hard for this. You deserve it." Despite their encouragement, Adam felt a twinge of uncertainty. The idea of speaking in front of so many people was daunting, especially for someone who was used to working quietly with his recordings. But as he thought about the tiger, its calm, steady gaze flashed through his mind. He realized that this was more than an opportunity. It was a responsibility. He had been given a gift, and now it was his turn to give back. The day of the conference arrived faster than Adam expected. Karen and Michael accompanied him, offering their support as they navigated the bustling event venue. The room where Adam would present was packed, filled with scientists, activists, and wildlife enthusiasts. As Adam rolled onto the stage, his recorder and laptop in hand, he felt a wave of nervous energy wash over him. But when he looked out at the audience, he saw not judgment, but curiosity and respect. Taking a deep breath, Adam began. He spoke about his lifelong passion for recording the sounds of nature and how it had given him a unique way of experiencing the world despite his physical challenges. He described the Serengeti in vivid detail, painting a picture of its beauty and fragility. Then he shared the story of the tiger, both encounters, the connection he had felt, and the profound impact it had left on him. As he played the recordings, the room fell silent. The sound of the tiger's breathing seemed to fill the space, its deep, rhythmic cadence resonating with everyone present. Adam watched as the audience leaned forward, captivated by the raw power and intimacy of the sounds. When he finished, the room erupted into applause. After the presentation, people flocked to Adam, eager to ask questions and share their thoughts. Dr. Hart approached him, her expression warm and admiring. "Adam," she said, "what you've created is extraordinary. You've reminded us all why we do what we do, to protect not just the animals but the connections they inspire in us." The conference marked a turning point for Adam. His album, The Serengeti's Voice, became a powerful tool for raising awareness about wildlife conservation. Conservationists used it to educate people about the importance of protecting natural habitats, while Adam himself became an advocate for the cause, sharing his experiences with schools, organizations, and online communities. Through it all, Adam remained grounded, always returning to his recordings and the quiet joy they brought him. For him, the tiger's gaze had not only been a connection to the wild, but also a call to action, one that he would carry with him for the rest of his life.